Quite a week for Indiana basketball. A win over the number 4 ranked Iowa Hawkeyes. We can start there. What did you see in that game that maybe we hadn't seen all year from this Indiana team?
I saw a team that was obviously kind of was prepared to play against Iowa. What happened? What I think that happens with this particular Indiana team is that there are certain teams that they'll play very, very well against, and the less athletic and the more methodical teams that maybe feature a big man, they'll have a lot of success against those teams that play that way. The Wisconsins and the Iowas of the world. If they played a game against Virginia, I think that'd be a heck of a game. It's because of the style of play matches their style of play on the other end. To slow down, make multiple passes, and then take a shot late into the shot clock, which normally happens. So when they were playing against Iowa, I was like, they got a chance because the foul trouble enabled them. What I have been preaching going into it was that we needed to start playing smaller. I really believe that they needed to, and people, it's not a popular opinion that they needed to, put race put him on the bench, so to speak, and start Jerome and space out the floor a lot more to get a lot more open looks, get Jerome Hunter going a little bit more because he's one of the kids who will shoot regardless if he makes it or not. I felt like that happened when and Jordan Geronimo had to come in. And is it Jordan
Yep.
Geronimo?
Yep.
Jordan
Yep.
Geronimo came into the game, and it caused Iowa some problems and quickness at those key positions, and they struggled. And luckily, Geronimo was able to compete defensively, and we were able to make some shots and make some plays. And that's how you have to play in the Big Ten on the road. And that particular matchup is a favorable matchup to an Indiana basketball team.
You inspired me. I listened to that. I think it was after Purdue when you were talking,
Yeah.
Raphael, and talking about not that race is doing anything wrong, but
No,
that
no.
it just helps space the floor. And I wrote a column about that this week because I completely agree with you. We'll see if that ever comes to fruition. Then, of course, on Sunday,
Mhm.
they give it right back. They lose to Rutgers. In your career, when you beat somebody like an Iowa, an equivalent, maybe when you beat Michigan State or something like that, how hard is it to just a couple days later go out and play again? Do you still feel that high? What do you have to do to kind of keep the momentum going?
I tweeted that out, and I said, it's always hard to play the next game against a team that everybody expects you to beat after you just upset a really, really good team. And it's because the other team begins to prepare for you as if you're at that top level team because you just beat another team. And that's a coach's responsibility and job as to prepare Rutgers for the game is to say, look, they just dismantled Iowa. Iowa was one of the top 5 teams in the country. Y'all better play, come with it. And with Rutgers was riding a 4 or 5 game losing streak as well. So with that, I knew it was a perfect storm of all the things wrong for IU. I could tell that, it's already tough when we play against teams that have guards that can create for themselves. And I think those are the teams that a pack line defense struggles against. And Rutgers, unfortunately for them, they played extremely well from the guard position. Geo Baker played well. Ryan Harper didn't play well, but he played well enough. He started off the game hitting a three, and it was like, uh-oh. But the key to that team was the battle underneath, and I think their big guy really, really had a stellar performance, and he neutralized our big guy. And that was in the end, that was the telling part of the game. Once again, you know, I'm used to seeing all IU teams get out in transition, get easy baskets off of their defense. And it's just something that we struggle to do that is it's going to continue to haunt us. We have to get easy baskets somehow, some way, pushing it in transition, our wings running, getting stops defensively, turn points off turnovers. I wish I could see that stat, to really solidify my position in stating that whenever you play this game, it's got to be fun. It can't be a super grind every game you play because some of those grinders you're just going to come up on the short end. So I'm not surprised that that's the performance that we had after a game like that. I wasn't surprised at all to see that.
What's the key to consistency in your mind, especially for a team that it's been such a roller coaster this year of ups and downs. They look good one day, then they go right back to the norm. What's the key to consistency?
The key to me, the key to consistency is finding the lineups that gel and that you know you're going to get something out of them every time you put that lineup on the floor. I don't question coach's motives. I don't know what happened, but Geronimo didn't get much playing time this game. So it's very hard to create a consistent way to play when, last game, this guy helped turn the game around, was one of the catalysts, but the next game, he's not playing. So in his mind, he's going to sit there, unless he was injured and it was something that was known before, he's sitting there like, why am I not playing? So now the focus changes when this kid comes into the game. You know what I mean? The lefty point guard, from Evansville. He makes 2 threes.
Lander, yeah.
Christian Lander. I can never remember his name. Christian Lander hits 2 threes. And where's the third one? If I hit 2 threes, there's another one coming up. And then there's one more. Just because
Jerome did the same thing too early in the game, and I thought of you immediately when I saw it. I'm like, AJ says when you're hot, you just got to keep shooting.
You gotta ride that boat. There's another play, and then shortly after he's out the game, and I don't see him anymore. So I'm like, okay, but that's consistency. It doesn't seem as if they know when their number's gonna be called. The only player that has really consistency is Trace. Trace knows that I'm going to play 34, 35 minutes a night, barring foul trouble. Nothing's going to change. I'm going to get my offensive rebound. That's consistency. But what are we going to get from Al on a daily basis? Is fantasy going to be the 2-point fantasy? Is he going to be the 16-point fantasy? Like, you have to be put in those positions and consistently produce in those positions to get consistent minutes. So I don't know what's going on with that, but I can understand why there's a fluctuation in the game every time this team plays.
Last one, and you were the guy on a lot of your teams in Bloomington, and you had some really good supporting players, some really good role players, but you were the guy. When you look at Trace, does that give him too much extra pressure on a night like or an afternoon like Sunday where he's not performing? Does it feel like he's trying to force it? What's it like to be that guy when you're not playing your best?
We're not playing you immediately have to turn your attention to figure out who's playing well around you, make sure that they continue to flourish, and that you try to get yourself going by doing the other things on the court. And that's, defending, that's rebounding, that's energy, that's being vocal. You want to stay engaged into the game because at some point, your consistency and your skill is going to begin to be a deciding factor in that game at some point. You just don't know when. Sometimes it's start to finish. So I know as a player, for me, sometimes it took me a while. It took me a TV timeout to get going. After the TV timeout, I scored 15 points in a row. And it's like, oh, man. But it was a feel of the game and me feeling the game out to see how I could, have an impact on it. And they did it. Sometimes the other team does a good job. Like Rutgers has a big guy. What's the big kid name?
Miles Johnson.
Miles Johnson is a hell of a player, man. He can neutralize a guy like Trace with his length, with his intelligence. He's not a dumb basketball player. He knows exactly what he's doing on the floor. His offensive rebounds, his efficiency, protected the basket. For our guards couldn't get in there and get finishes. So he neutralized Trace. But there's ways that Trace could have easily thought to get him in foul trouble and neutralize him and get him out the game, but he was never in foul trouble, so Miles Johnson was able to stay and have an impact. So as a leader and as a guy that's going to be looked at as that guy, you got to immediately switch your focus to the other things and other ways. Like when Lander hit those shots, I'm going to the coach like, hey, Lander needs one more. He hit that one, we give him one more. He missed that one, we give him one more. Now we might be done with him. All right, we got what we can get. All right, who's next? Because I need you guys to hit these shots to soften up this defense. So he has to grow up really fast and start thinking like that in order for his consistency, because he's bringing attention to himself by averaging 20 and 9. So, he's going to be number one on the scouting report. So they're going to take him away. How can you help the other players around you get better?
Absolutely. And we're hoping that the supporting cast of the 2021 Hoosiers can play a little bit like your guest on today's podcast.
Yep.
One of your favorite supporting cast members. And I guess for a supporting cast, he turned out pretty good. First round draft pick, Kirk Haston. Right. Just an awesome podcast coming up, AJ. I enjoyed listening to you guys talk. like you said, you lose track of time because the stories are just so awesome.
Stories are so awesome, man. And I feel like a lot of our former alum have a lot to say. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like they bottle up a lot of, don't have that platform to really talk about some of the things they want to talk about. And even with him, we missed out on about 3 subjects that we probably should have covered, and we just kept it all Indiana basketball. But I feel like it's an outlet for those guys, and you look up and it's 60 minutes gone like that. And you're like, man, I'm not even a quarter of the way through what I was about, going to ask this guy. So, but Kirk is always fun. He always the same vibrant attitude, man. And he was, I said in the podcast, he was tough. Coach Knight was tough on him, but he was one of the guys who really, really, listened to what Coach Knight said and not how he said it, and really gritted his teeth and really continued to get better and turn into a 3rd-team All-American and the 1st-round draft pick. So, this is another great story of the development of a player in a Coach Knight system.
Well, you want to talk about a guy who can tell you how to play under Knight. He wrote a book about it. So
right.
this guy's got some great stories. Let's go ahead and send it off to that podcast with AJ Guyton and Kirk Haston.
Welcome, everybody, to the House of Hoosier podcast. I'm your host, AJ Guyton, and I'm here with a very, very special guest. Normally I haven't gotten to really interview many guys that I've actually played with. I've kind of started going way back or way forward, but one of my favorite teammates, man, one of the best players I ever put on the Crimson and Cream. I got Kirk Haston with me. How you doing, Kirk?
I'm doing great, AJ. Good to be on with you, man.
Man, it's good to see you, man. Looking healthy, man. You still getting out there a little bit. What we doing to stay fit?
I got a very low impact Nordic track for the so it's a lot easier on the knees.
Right.
I do quite a bit more golfing than I do basketball playing. But if every now and then if it's a half court game, they know not to even text me if it's a full court game. But,
right.
But if for some reason there's other people playing on the other end, they're like, oh, it's half court today. I'm like, I can give you an hour.
I can get down with that. How the knees holding up, man? How the knees holding up?
Not bad. It's just it's amazing. You don't really think about it when you're going through it, but I mean, it's when you're really playing and you look back at how many hours and I mean how much like jam fingers and all that kind of gets added up, and at the end it catches up with you a little bit. But I've been pretty fortunate. I've dodged a lot of the major stuff. I've had a couple of knee scopes, but not anything too major.
I tell everybody, man, I think most IU players who play for Coach Knight would have knee issues because we were forced in pre-practice to set up about probably roughly around 150 to 200 cuts. Planting.
Oh yeah.
So everybody's planting every day for 4 years, man, and in the off season as well.
Exactly that, and factor that in with Tim Garl taking us to the football stadium, running on the concrete steps. That'll do it too.
They get in trouble for that nowadays. But man, you had a phenomenal career, man. You had a career that was basically hinged on really player development. You really was patient with it. You took your time, worked a lot. You were coached hard, and you got a great story to tell, man. But first, I want to talk about, life in Tennessee, Lowellville, Tennessee. What was growing up in Lowellville like at the time that you grew up, at your earliest recollection?
Well, you've got a couple of options in Perry County. Or Lowellville. I mean, it's play sports or hunt, and so there's outside of that, there's not a whole lot of options. But we've got actually one of the reasons that it was such a neat fit for me to go to Indiana was because Perry County is they've kind of got their own Hoosier story, their own Milan story. Going all the way back to the 1950s when it was one classification, we had one of the smallest schools in the state, and they won the state championship. So ever since then, it's just been basketball country. So, growing up here, I mean, it's no, you got to drive an hour to go to a movie. There was no McDonald's, there's no stoplight, there's no four-way. So it was, it's small town. I mean, when I was growing up, it was probably about 3,000 or 4,000 people in my hometown. So So it was an event to go to the big city of Nashville or something. But it's just
Right.
That's why it was a good. That's why it was just I thought it was a good fit going to Bloomington. It felt pretty small.
Like a bigger version. And how did you get introduced to the game? Like, you say you either hunted or you play sports. Did you play any other sports, or how did you get introduced to the game of basketball?
Yeah, I mean, baseball was was definitely my first passion. My granddad was he was a coach at Freed Hardeman University. Played college basketball at David Lipscomb. So I had my own personal baseball / basketball coach with my granddad. So he's really the one that got me into it. Hoyt Kirk, you probably remember seeing him coming around the game some. He's still preaching. He's still preaching 2 sermons a week at 92 years old, full-time preaching still. But he's the one that really got me introduced. And I realized when my 72-mile-an-hour fastball was getting knocked around pretty good my freshman year of high school, that it was going to be time to probably shift full-time to basketball. So after my freshman year of baseball, I just solely focused on basketball.
I mean, so did a growth spurt have anything to do with that? When did you start hitting that growth spurt?
I was always pretty tall, but the problem was I was always pretty round.
Yeah.
When I was in like 6th or 7th grade, I hit that bad awkward stage. Right. I remember 7th grade, we got these new. It was always a big deal. We finally got some new basketball jerseys, the Loboville Hornets, and so they handed out our jerseys. And I was really excited. And so they handed us our jerseys. I went into the locker room to change. And I didn't know it then back in 7th grade that I invented the Under Armour form-fitting shirt. I didn't realize it at the time. I could have been a billionaire. Right. I put that thing on, and it was leaving nothing to the imagination. I mean, it was a lot of hills and valleys, and wasn't pretty. And so my mom realized that I was pretty upset about it, and so she kind of got to the bottom of it, and she took that jersey to a seamstress in town. This is embarrassing. And she had the seamstress pop the seams on both sides and add about this much maroon fabric on both sides so I could breathe during the season. But that's a good mom though, because she knew I was not going to feel comfortable jiggling up and down the court. And I needed some space. So that was kind of a wake up call. I started getting in a lot better shape going into my 8th grade year. But that 7th grade year, I was as round as I was tall.
What were you looking at as far as size and weight? What were you about?
Oh, good question. Good question. I've got 2 boys right now. And so I had my old growth chart that my mom had of me. And so I plotted out their points in different colors along with mine. And I'm like, I've always been 1.5 inches or 2 inches ahead of wherever they're at each year. Right. But this past year, I showed my wife this. She got a kick out of it. My youngest son, Cooper, he was about 1.5 inches shorter than me at the same age, at 10 years old. And Cooper weighs about 85 pounds. And I said, Casey, you want to guess what I weighed? I said, I had 1.5 inches on him, but you want to guess what I weighed? And she said, 100. I said, 135.
Dang.
So I was large and in charge.
Right.
But yeah, I was about 7th grade. I was around 6'2". Okay. And then 8th grade 6'4", and then it was just steadily kind of a couple inches until I topped out at 6'9". But right. Of course, high school coaches put like 6'11". All high school coaches lie. But
yeah, what where you get this height from? Where did this come from?
Well, my mom was only 5'5",
right.
but my dad was 6'4", and so the Haston side of the family has quite a bit of size. So there's I've got a cousin at 6'6" and everything. So, but my mom was my 5th grade teacher, and I was taller than her when I was in 5th grade, calling her Miss Patty. So right. I caught her pretty fast.
Right. Where's your relationship with your mom? I know she passed during the time we were playing, but what was your earliest recollections of her and her influence on you athletically?
Well, I think the best thing I learned from her and from Granddad too was, and I'm trying to do a better job of this as a parent. They were much better at this than I am. is leaving the game at the game once you're on the way home. And and I always appreciated that. And so whether it was a bad game or good game, I knew that it was going to be the same ride home no matter what.
Right.
I think the other thing is that she was a single parent that was a school teacher, so we didn't have, we were struggling, and so she never made me, even though she needed it. She understood that when I got to 7th, 8th, freshman year of high school, she told me, she was like, listen, if you will, she thought I had a decent chance at getting a scholarship maybe somewhere. She was hoping Freed Hardeman, NAIA, but she just, she said, if you will treat this as your summer job, you don't have to go haul hay, you don't have to go get but you gotta take it seriously. And so I really think that helped kind of with the work ethic approach of like, at about 8th grade year freshman, that became my job basically, is just to try to get better. And so she let me do that. She could have gone the other way and said, stop wasting your time with that, we need the money. But she was playing the long game, and that was, I've always been appreciative of that.
Absolutely. How did you manage to escape becoming an offensive lineman? I know you live in Tennessee country. I know you're SEC. They'll turn you into an offensive lineman in a heartbeat, man. How did you escape that part?
Well, fortunately, in a way, since we were in the heart of basketball country, we were such a small school, we didn't have football until actually the year after I graduated high school.
Oh, okay.
Football really wasn't even on the radar. I mean, even though it was huge on every county around us, it was more the focus than anything else. But our county, we were slow to get to football because of our size. We had it in the late 60s and early 70s, but it gone away until 98.
Oh, okay.
So that was one reason. The other reason is, as you could probably attest, when we were doing our strength training, I did like a half of a pull-up my first testing down in the basement with Paul. So that's the other reason, is that I wasn't very strong. One of the reasons I probably got redshirted. And I'll tell you, maybe the most embarrassing thing, one of the things that almost probably sent me home quicker than anything, was when we had to come in. They didn't have this fancy body fat testing that they have now, where you can just stand on. It was the calipers.
Right.
I lost a lot of sleep at night thinking about getting those calipers on me. And so, we'd have to go to the basement at like 5:45 in the morning at the start of preseason, and they'd want to do all the testing and everything. And so I went in there and I was like, we'll get this done quick. It's 5:45 in the morning. There ain't nobody in here. And they're like, they bring me over and they're like, just everybody can see everything. They're like, all right, take your shirt off. Like, great. And they're they're pinching all the fat. About the time that this is going on, I kid you not making this up, the female track and field team comes in, the women, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? Is this some sort of hazing? I mean, what are y'all trying to do to me? I'm never going to survive this. So I left that day and I'm like, I'm going to Tennessee. I can't handle this. Yeah. This is forget mind games from Coach Knott. This is the ultimate mind game. I got to get out of here.
Do you know what you started with versus what you finished with at IU? Percentage?
Yeah, it was I was in the high. I think I was in the high 20s. I mean, it was weird. Like I was like that. I was so heavy when I was in like 7th and 8th grade. It's kind of like, as you get in shape, it's kind of hard if you're not doing a lot of muscle training, which I really wasn't in high school. We didn't have a weight room.
Right.
You lose the weight kind of goes off, but there's no tone. It just kind of just like, and so it was I think I got down to, by the time my junior year, it was around 10%. I never was a fitness freak. I just don't have that DNA in me.
Yeah.
I have to stay on top of it. I still try to not eat too many chips and fries, or I'll blow up like a balloon. But yeah, it was probably about an 18% drop in a couple of years.
Wow, that's pretty good, man. You worked it off. You had no choice. We played basketball year round back then.
Yeah.
You was gonna be in shape.
There's only so much buffaloes you can eat in a day.
We talked about this, Tom Coverdale and I. Our training table was atrocious if you think about it.
Terrible. It was terrible. McCree's steak and shake.
What was the buffet we
yeah.
had to go to? What was the buffet right there on next to the Hampton? Next to the Hampton Inn. It was a buffet that we had.
Yeah,
That was an option. Marsh.
Marsh. I loved it because you could get actually the salad bar at Marsh.
Yeah,
I did like
exactly.
Marsh every now and then. There was, I mean, the best one was when we every now and then we'd get little Zagrebs. You know,
Yeah,
we'd
we
get
did.
that was you could do some good damage there. But yeah, for the most part, well, you think about this. When we would go on the road, it was get there, we'd get to a hotel, and the coaches would go eat, and they would set us up a night. They would just say, basically, go to the hotel restaurant, which was usually kind of, you know, like a kind of sports, you know, it was just sports food, sports bar kind of food. And we would all get wings. I mean, just whatever wings, burgers, fries. Then we would all get desserts.
Yeah.
And then we would go up and watch about 25, 30 minutes of video with coach. And then we'd get to our rooms, and in the hallways of the rooms, you know what was there?
Right.
Big old trays of desserts again that Coach Knott would order. So we would have, right before bed, we would have chocolate cake, ice cream, right, like 2 hours after we just ate everything. It was crazy. Wouldn't do that in a million years today.
Unbelievable how you could go out there and perform with what we ate. And I was like, I'm appalled. But you went, you had a pretty good high school career, but you were still under recruited, man. So like, and I read a little bit in your book about Vanderbilt, Tennessee, where kind of your home for one to stay close to home. Talk about how IU came into the picture. Recollect.
Yeah, it was pretty strange. I wanted to commit to Vanderbilt, and I wanted to get it out of the way I wanted to do it before the early signing period. I didn't want to fool with it during my senior year. And Vanderbilt actually, about 4 or 5 months before the signing period, Van Bredikoff was there. He rescinded the offer, and I talked to their lead assistant coach later on, and he told me that they had a big falling out because he was just like, because he'd recruited me. Yep. And Bredikoff has just decided I couldn't play in the SEC, right. and maybe he was right. Yeah. And so they rescinded the offer, and I went to Tennessee. I contacted Tennessee, and I had been interested in going there. And
so wait a minute, Kevin O'Neill, you contacted Tennessee?
No. Well, they had offered.
Oh, okay.
They had offered.
Oh, okay.
No. They had offered, but I reached out to Tennessee and about a month before the signing period, and Kevin O'Neill was there, and they had just, he said, we had just a rush of early commitments, and it was like, I think Hathaway and Tony Harris and some of those. And he said, actually, right now we've already filled up our spots, and we just don't have a spot available. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll just play out the senior season and see what happens, since those were kind of my 2 spots that I was looking to land. And so Kevin O'Neill, I found all this out later. Kevin O'Neill calls Coach Knott. He says, "Hey, we had this kid that we liked, but we don't have the space for him." He says, "I know y'all don't come down, to the South much, but he said, I think that this kid would fit really good into, the way y'all play in the Indiana system." And so Coach Knott sent Ron Felling down to a practice, and then about a month later, Coach Knott came down to the smallest gym that we play on in the district, Clifton, Tennessee. And he came to a game, and I knew he was supposed to be coming. And the girls' game, I never saw him. And while we're warming up, there's just this buzz in the crowd. I mean, people started leaving and going outside, and I didn't know why until later I found out that they were going out to use the payphone because cell phones were just basically bag phones in. They were calling people in town to come to the gym because this was the biggest thing that ever happened in Clifton, Tennessee. And so I'm warming up, and we all got this one guy on every team you've ever played on. This one guy, Blake Warren, on our team kept running through, and he kept going. As he'd go past me, I've got my game face on. He's like, "Ooh, Coach Knott's here. Don't screw this up, Haston. Don't screw this up, Haston." And but anyhow, the game went good. I never even saw Coach Knott that night. I never even saw him in the stands. Wow. He left at halftime.
Oh,
and so next day at school, I get to school and I asked my high school coach, Bruce Lattin. I was like, "Well, have you heard anything?" He said, "I hadn't heard anything." I'm like, "Great, that's weird." So I'm in English class, and and get called to the principal's office for a phone call. And so I go in there and I just pick up the phone. And you probably know this, Coach never much one for pleasantries on the phone. It's like you pick up the phone, it's like mid-conversation. And he's like, Kirk, I was at the game last night. I'd like to have you come to Indiana if you'd want to come to play for me. And I said, Coach, if you think that I can play for you, then that's what I want to do. He said, we'll send the paperwork. I said, okay. Boom. Never took a visit. Never sat down with him. Never met him.
Wow.
And it just felt like that was the right thing to do. And so that's how the recruiting. It was like a 3-minute talk.
So you never came down for a visit. You never toured the campus. You had already signed when you came down, or committed verbally before you came down.
I'd already committed before I came down, and that was probably the wise thing that they already had me basically locked in, because they stuck me with Mike Lewis and Jason Collier when I came up for my visit, and it was lucky I survived that. But they actually said I was the easiest recruit that they ever had, because they said that I just wanted Buffalo's brought to me at the apartment. I didn't want to go anywhere, so I was
nowhere. Yeah, you ain't want to be. Hey, I'm glad with that group touring you. I'm glad you decided to keep your commitment, man. That's a heck of a story. We talk. Every player who's been on this podcast has talked about their moment. Their recruitment with Coach Knight, and their first time speaking to him, and how short it was and how matter of fact it was. And it's like, it almost gives you no choice but to say, yeah. It's like, are you going to come play for me? It's like, you can't say no, but you also don't tell the general, you know what, I'm going to think about it. I'm not sure. Like you don't tell him that. So it's almost like if he asks you that, you definitely have to say, I'm coming.
He was a good closer. He was a good
closer. Right, exactly. Hey, so when you get to IU, man, you end up redshirting. What year did you redshirt? How did that conversation come about? And I know every player wants to play immediately, but how did you feel about it?
I was disappointed, but a part of me was relieved because I mean. Just being pragmatic at the time, and being on the court and playing against, I don't know, somebody like Andre Patterson every day,
right?
And trying to guard somebody like Jason Collier, these physical specimens that are just freak athletes. I kind of knew that I really wasn't ready for the Big Ten yet, so I mean it was disappointing, but also a little bit of a relief that I knew that I had some time to get my legs under me, because, I mean, those guys. I mean, Andre was on a different planet, man. I mean, I saw him last year, or maybe I guess it was last year. It was maybe 18 months ago, and he looks like he did in college. Like, I mean, I was like, man, him and Luke Jimenez never age. I don't know what's going on, but like never age. So, but anyhow, that it was disappointing. I thought that I was going to actually right at the beginning of the season, I think was when Collier ended up transferring somewhere in there.
Okay.
And I thought there was a chance that they might let me come back, and go ahead, since there was kind of a roster spot open, but we still, with Eggers there and man, I mean, it was pretty post heavy at the time. So it was definitely the best thing.
You were there when, because I think when I was there my freshman year, the front line was Harris Muezinovich, Robbie Eggers, Richard Mandeville, Jason Collier, Andre Patterson. It was just like, it was the biggest dudes I had ever seen in my life. And I'm like, and then you go play. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that those guys you just listed is like, if you watch the Liam Neeson action movie, they're like all the villains that are trying to come kill Liam Neeson.
Right, exactly.
Or Keanu Reeves,
right?
And John Wick. You just listed the lineup of assassins. Just like Muzinovich was like one of the strongest guys I'd ever played against. Like,
that's incredible.
You could not, like him and Evan Eschmeyer, when people ask me like, well, who are some of the strongest people you've been around? And they're wanting me to say somebody like, David West or somebody, that I played against. I was like, Harris Muzinovich and Evan Eschmeyer, you could not move those guys. They were houses.
No, not at all, man. Hey, we're gonna jump into something I call the Hoosier 10. I'm gonna ask you 10 questions that only Hoosiers could know. So you answer them to the best of your ability. What dorm or apartment did you stay on campus?
Well, I didn't ever
Freshman year.
stay in the
Sorry.
I didn't stay in the dorm.
What?
That
Freshman
was
year, you ain't staying in the dorm?
it was the first year that they ever let freshmen not have to stay in dorms.
Uh,
And so I got quite the education because I was roommates with Tom Geyer and Rob Turner, Dutch Muthasia himself.
Dutch Museum.
So there's quite a few stories came from us three living together.
I can imagine.
But I think it's changed now, the name of it, but it was the one, was it Village Apartments? It was the one right across from Memorial Stadium.
Okay.
There was,
The villas?
I think it was the Villas. Yeah. It was either Villas or the Village Apartments. And so I stayed there. It was an easy walk to the bus, but it led to some interesting times living with those two.
What was your favorite restaurant to eat in during your playing days?
I would say McCree's was my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly behind it was Buffalo's. Both of them were way up there. McCree's, which sadly is not there anymore. I really love that. I remember they used to have a thing where if you went in and you asked for the worst seat in the house, you could get a free appetizer or something, and then it kind of worked. It was like a little secret thing, but then it spread so fast they stopped doing it. But I was a big McCree's fan.
Awesome. When the last time you've been to Bloomington?
Went back for when Coach Knight came back. I think that was the last time when we were there for that. I've probably been to about 4 or 5 games in the last 3 or 4 years. When I was still coaching, I would take my seniors up for a game. So I actually, starting in about 2011, I was going probably once or twice a year. So I've probably been up there a little bit more than that. So probably about 10 times in the last 5 or 6 years.
Playing in the Big Ten, you kind of mentioned this earlier. What player gave you the toughest time individually?
Man, I would say Zach Randolph. He was. I know he wasn't known for being just an incredible defender or anything, but you're talking about somebody that was incredibly strong and just, I mean, 10 times faster than what people really expect, and quick. I mean, just very smart player too. Just, I mean, he was always tough to play against. I'd say that Randolph would be up there.
Definitely. Thinking back, what was your toughest place to get a win?
Oh, in the Big, well, I'm gonna give you 2 answers. Anytime that we played at Freedom Hall against Kentucky, that was always kind of a weird atmosphere. I know it's not Big Ten, but that place always just had a weird feel to it. But actually, I would say it always seems like Illinois for some reason, and I know that Illinois was really. I mean, they were really tough there. Michigan State, of course, was tough, but I just thought, as far as combination of team and atmosphere, I never did feel comfortable for some reason playing at Illinois. It was a tough environment to be comfortable in, to me.
All that orange, man. All that orange. Purdue player you dislike playing against the most?
Brian Cardinal.
I knew that was coming. Why is that, man?
I don't know. By the way, did you not think that him? I may say his name wrong. Was it Jax? Do you remember Jax? Jakes. I always say Jax. Yeah. I don't know how, but it seemed like that was Cardinal's son. I know that the timeline doesn't match up, but man, it's just the most, like, just get under your skin, just as a play's over, elbow to the chin. And it was just kind of that passive aggressive, cheap shots that just you absorb like 10 of them, and then you finally deliver one back, and it looks like you're overreacting, and you're the one that gets the foul and technical. They are so good at that, man. It's so annoying, and it's. I mean, I know it was smart of how they played, but I hated it.
I know there's a lot to pick from because you played at a time where it was really, really physical with the Big Ten. So it's a lot of play. You could pick some from practice. What was your most memorable Coach Knight moment? Your most memorable?
Oh, me. I think, and I think the one where he kicked a player off the team at one point. He ended up bringing him back, but I remember the setup, and I got there to practice one day, and one of the seniors' lockers was completely cleaned out, and all it was in there was 2 items. There was 2 items left that were out of place, and we all didn't know what was going on. The nameplate was gone, all of his gear was gone. We're mid-season, and we go out and we're warming up for practice, and this senior comes out, and he's got these 2 items in his hands like this. And he yells down at Coach Knight on the other end. He's like, Coach, what's this about? And like the gym just went quiet. I mean, it was just like, and Coach, and everybody kind of spins their head around and looks at Coach Knight. It was like out of a movie, like a Wild West,
Right.
So Coach Knight just slowly starts walking towards him. And, and the senior, he still got his street clothes on because he didn't have any gear to put on. And like Coach Knight's walking slowly towards him. I swear, like a tumbleweed went across half court. It's
right.
Like
yes.
And so I'm on that end of the court, close enough that I can hear what's going on. And Coach Knight gets down to him, and he's the player's got a sleeve of tennis balls in one hand and a tennis racket in the other. And Coach Knight looked at him, and he looked at the tennis balls and the tennis racket, and he said, "Son, the way you've been playing defense here lately, it's obvious you're not committed to playing a team sport. So I thought you'd be better off taking up an individual one." And he kicked him out. And I was like, "Oh, that was a great setup, and man, it delivered in the final episode." That was,
right.
Wow. And so, it was a couple of days until he let him come back, but I just appreciated the thought, the effort, and the delivery. Yeah. And a lot of people didn't realize, yes, Coach Knight can be blunt and just over the head with something. But a lot of times he was able to get points across in some ways that you just that were surprising, but landed an impact, and that was one of them with me.
Awesome, man! Awesome story. If you had to put together your own personal 4-player IU basketball Mount Rushmore, who would you put on that list?
Oh man, I would go. And I'm gonna forget somebody, and you're gonna say their name. I'm gonna be like, yeah, of course. Off the top of my head, I've just the first 3 that come to my mind anytime I think about something like this is Isaiah, Henderson, and Chaney. And I just can't. That's just kind of my wheelhouse of like guys that I saw a lot of and knew a lot of. And I know I'm. If you go back a little bit further, I'm not as well versed in it, but I'd say I might have to go Kent Benson.
Okay.
I just don't know. That's the first 3 come to mind always are those, and I would put those 3 up. I'd feel pretty good with my starting 5 if those 3 are on it, no matter who my other 2 are.
Hey, everybody's has been different. There's no right or wrong answer, so it's just a matter of who pops in your head first. That's what I tell people. So, who was your favorite IU player of all time?
I'm going to say
past or present. It don't matter.
Yeah,
that you enjoy watching, that you just enjoy.
Somebody that I just thoroughly enjoyed watching, and I'm just going to go with the first one that popped in my head. I loved watching Yogi play. It was a long time. Like when you're a kid, you can you watch it, you can kind of get be a fan of somebody. It's a little bit different when you're older and the guys you're watching you're older than, but I would say Yogi was one of the first players I'd watched in a while where it was just like you could just kind of see the enthusiasm and the joy, and I don't know. I just thoroughly enjoyed watching Yogi play when he was one that one of the first ones that after I got through playing that really did have me wanting to tune in to watch.
Right. Awesome. And what past or present player defines IU basketball? So this player is, you think Indiana basketball when you think about this player?
I think it's got to be, to me, Damon Bailey.
Right.
Just
Right.
the, I mean, going back to like the Sports Illustrated, and you just kind of have these little snapshots of what you kind of, as growing up, what you kind of envision Indiana basketball looking like. And for lack of a better term, and this is, I mean, I'm not saying anything, but you just thought like short shorts,
Yeah.
and tough nose, and I
Right.
don't know. It was just something about, so I guess that would be, if there was a kind of a poster that you were going to create, I think that he would have to be on it,
Right.
if you're going to do the Indiana Hoosier basketball poster.
Right. Hey, man, that concludes our Hoosier 10, man. Those were all great answers. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just what the player feels. So, man, we're going to jump right back into your IU career, man. And I know that you developed and you begin to get more minutes the following year after Jason Collier left. Then the following year, Luke Recker left. The year you arrived, Neil Reed left. What do you remember about those times where guys were just leaving the program? What were your thoughts? What were thoughts going through your mind, and how did you get through it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd never experienced anything like that. I mean, that was
Right.
it was really, I mean, it was just disheartening, because I guess I felt like I mean, I felt like if I could go, and I just like, I was struggling, but I was like, if I felt like if I can go through this and I'm able to handle it, and I'm this, as coach would say, I'm from Podunk, Tennessee,
Right.
and I'm not, and I was like, this is tough, but I don't think it's tough enough that I feel like that it's unfair right now, or I would have a better chance of success somewhere else. And
Right.
I mean, and more power to him. I mean, Luke went on to have an incredible career at Iowa, and of course Collier had a great run at Georgia Tech. But it was, I just didn't get it. I just I know that I probably will be the 100th person to say this on this podcast, but the most common mantra that you had when people would come back, and it was incredible advice, was like, they would say, listen to why Coach Knott is saying something to you, not how he's saying it to you. And if you always tried to approach it, I mean, it was tough sometimes, but if you always just tried to say like, why is this going down like this?
Right.
And I tell people this, I mean, like if somebody says, hey, did you play basketball? Yes. Where did you play basketball at? Indiana. Did you have any Coach Knott stories?
Yeah.
What was it like, Coach? Did he throw a chair at you? It's always the same. Like, it's like Coach Knott. It's like Indiana basketball bingo. Oh, chair comment. You go down the list. And so what I tell people is like, listen, 90% of the stuff that Coach Knott said and did, I understood the reason behind it, and I think it had a good meaning, and it came from a good place. I said there's probably 10% that wasn't doing anybody any good, and I said I said that's just that's probably the ratio for most of us, but his was high profile, a lot more than what our 10% of nonsense might be. So, so it just confused me, because I just didn't feel, I just was as far away from that feeling most days as possible. We all had our moments, but where we were like, what are we doing? But for the most part, the next day you knew it was going to be work as usual.
Right. You were around, and I never knew the answers to these questions. Did you know why Collier transferred, or why Luke Recker transferred? I wasn't around, because it seemed to happen just sporadically, and then all of a sudden they were gone. But I never knew a real reason why either of those guys left.
I never ever had any kind of insight on that. I just I remember finding out about I think Luke was roommates with Lewis, with Mike Lewis, and I just the way I remember it is that they had just kind of called some of us over, or a couple of us. They said, "Hey, stop by the apartment, and we got just something to tell you." And so I just remember stopping by, and them just kind of saying, that Luke saying that he was going to leave, and it was just like it was just kind of like the normal thing. It was just like, I just feel like I can have a better opportunity. It was just kind of your usual kind of platitudes, but I never did get a very great concrete answer to that myself. It was I think that you kind of approach it two different ways. you feel like it's going to hurt the team, but then you also realize it's possible opportunity for other people to be able to do stuff. And
Absolutely.
and I mean that, and Dane 5 to this day gives me all kinds of grief. If we could be texting about the U.S. Open golf tournament, and then in the middle of it, he's going to be like, "I can't believe you didn't come back your senior year." And he'll take that shot at me.
Yeah, right.
And it's and I regret a lot of that myself. But I also look at, George Leach got a chance. All these guys that I would have been just chewing up some of their opportunities. Jared Odell. I mean, some of these guys that had this incredible moment that I was like, man, that sometimes that works out. I mean, those guys there was 30 minutes, 35 extra minutes a game to go around to guys that had got to have that experience. So, and I think that's kind of the way we had to approach it when those guys were leaving, is that, it was next man up kind of thing.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, I regret, my only regret is not knowing what was going on. Like, I had no idea. And, and always when you look back at your career, you look back what you could have did better. And from my personal standpoint, it would have been you have to be friends and you have to have genuine relationships with your teammates in order to have success. And I didn't feel like, me personally, I didn't engage in that enough. We weren't bad guys, but it was like when you went through practice and you went through conditioning, everybody just kind of darted out their separate ways.
Yeah.
It was just what it was. And only people who had dialogue with one another were the roommates. And that's why everything was so, but to be a good team and to be a championship team and learn this as you go forward is you have to really be on the same page. And as a leader, and I was a leader for 3 years on that team, possibly 4, it was just so locked in on doing the job that you didn't realize that there were some people next to you that were unhappy, or it could possibly be because of me or perception or whatever. But I just was oblivious to it and didn't find out until it was already done. And as I'm talking to guys, I'm like, what? I never knew why these dudes left, or because Coach Knight was tough on you, but I would always see you bite the teeth and just keep moving. I mean, it was like, dang, it was on Kirk's ass, but he's turned into an All-American, at the end of the day. So that's just very important for kids in college to understand.
That's a great catch it's a great observation by you, looking back, of just being able to learn, because that you're even at that point, you're today still looking back, learning how to be a better leader,
right.
And that's, and that's pretty, I like how you're doing that, because that's very true, because if you don't have that connectivity, and to be honest, when I coached for about around 10 years. And one of the things that I did, I learned a lot of things from Coach Knight that I used directly, tried to copycat. One of the things that I went opposite of him on was the kind of the not being as demonstrative towards players in front of them. And kind of what I told my players was, I just told them, I said, you don't show me up, I don't show you up. I said, if we've got something that we need to discuss, or we've got an issue with each other, we take it to the locker room and we'll hash it out.
Right.
But we're not going to air out our grievances in front of everybody, and especially the other team. And so that was something I felt like, kind of to your point, that we saw that maybe we did opposite. We learned to do maybe a little bit more the other way. Both methods can work. I'm not saying that one way is better, one way is not, but I just felt like, as far as when you're dealing with kids in present day and at the high school level, that you're better off trying to keep it in-house when you have that, and not kind of show the kind of like in The Godfather, where he gets on to Sonny for like, never let anybody outside the family know what you're thinking, when he's having the old meeting, but anyhow, that's kind of the approach that I ended up going with that.
I learned from Tom Izzo that you can get on your players, but if you get on them to the point where it affects the emotion, now we talk about the social emotional side of coaching and playing, that you have to do something to shore that up on the back end. So if I get on Kirk Haston, I have to be able to go to Kirk and let him know, hey, this is basketball. I don't personally dislike you. I'm not trying to destroy your mentality, but I have
Yeah,
to.
it's a
I have to,
scales.
yes, a scale.
You got to keep the scales at certain. And different
Right.
players need. Yeah, it's
And
exactly.
I
That's a
know
good
that
point.
from their perspective, I know that that's probably what happened. It was too much. It was too much of this and not enough of this. And at
Yeah.
that time, it was changing. The game was changing, and we Coach Knight and a lot of coaches had to change the way that they approach things. So it's very important for coaches out there to know that you have to be able to find balance because the emotional side is a lot more sensitive than it was then. So, you can tell them you're traveling every time you do that move, they'll get mad now. It's like, damn, I can't even coach. So you got to balance it out, man. Your mother passed, and I remember that happening, and I was thinking like, man, I could not continue playing basketball. Like from that moment, I knew you were more mentally tough than I was on a certain level when it came to personal issues. Because I'm a mama's boy too, and I was like, how are you able to persevere, and how take us back if you can. If you don't want to talk about it, don't. But take us back to that moment where you found that out and the thoughts that were going through your mind, and eventually how did Coach Knight, did he have any part in helping you persevere and get through it? I know basketball does a lot and keeps you busy, but that's something that's just an anomaly, and you just never think that's going to happen, and it did to you. How did you get through that? How Coach Knight helped you?
Yeah, I don't mind talking about it. I think that a lot of times people think that they don't want to bring something like that up, but especially after a certain amount of time, when you get a chance to talk about somebody like that,
Right.
even if it's in a bad moment, it's you don't mind. But I was actually, you remember Dave Pillar and Brandon Sorrell and Ted Hodges? They all lived
Shout
together.
out all those IU basketball manager legends. I know you listen.
You're talking about Mount Rushmore managers.
Right.
But also Jerry Hickey, he was another roommate of theirs. But I would always stay over there at Hoosier Courts, and I stayed over there all the time. And so it was the last day of summer school. I was going back home the next day, and so I stayed over their house until probably about, I don't know, 11:30 at night or whatever. And I drive back across to my apartment, and I get there, and there's a message on my answer machine, and I just hit it, and it's my granddad. And I can tell he's upset, but he just says, "Hey, Kirk, you need to give me a call when you get in." And so, I call granddad, and he just says, there was a tornado tonight, and we lost your mom, and I never had it this. I just immediately went to my knees.
Right.
Like I really it just knocked me to the floor. And he just said, is anybody, do you have any friends there right now? I'm like, no, I'm just at my apartment. And he goes, go back to your friend's house. I mean, it's like midnight by now. And they were all going to bed when I left. And so I was like, I don't want to bother them. And he's like, no, you need to. He said, go back over to your friend's apartment tonight. And I said, okay. And so I don't know who he called or how the word got around. When I left the apartment, like they were going to bed, and the parking lot was pretty much empty because it was the last day of summer school. All the students were gone. I got back over there, and there was like cars there. Their door was open. There was like 12 people inside the apartment. There was people everywhere that had come over because they knew that's where I was heading back. And so from that point, I don't know who contacted who, but from that point that night, I mean, I had 20, 30 people of the Hoosier basketball family around me from that night. And they got me through that night. I remember just different people at different times. We just go walk through the parking lot and just take a walk.
Right.
I remember the assistant coaches got there at about probably 1 a.m. and I visited with them. They stayed with me for a while. And then the next day, Granddad drove up and picked me up to take me back to Tennessee for the funeral and for the arrangements. And so I rode back with him. When I got back to the house, I walked in the door. sat down in the house for about 3 minutes when Coach Knott knocked on the door. He'd almost beat me home.
Really?
It was so late the night before that they couldn't get him at like 1 a.m. So he didn't find out about it until the next morning at like 7. But I was already on the way back. So he had flown down with the assistant coaches, and so I just he took me back to the kitchen at my house that I grew up in, and so I'm just sitting there at the kitchen table with Coach Knight, the same table that Mom and I did homework on and wrapped Christmas presents, and and I'll never forget this. He said I knew your mom. He knew her story and everything, and he said I know that you're going to be able to make it through this because you're like her and you know how tough she was. And so that was just kind of my little mantra for the rest of that year and going forward, was just that you got to show that toughness that she showed being a single parent, raising a kid, and besides just having having a basketball family, man. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that was a lot, but also, I don't know if this came from Coach Knott directly or if this was more just Tim Garl. But I want to give Tim Garl a lot of credit. He found me a counselor. And I don't know if anybody on the team even knew this, but he found me a grief counselor to talk to. And so once or twice a week, I would go and just and have sessions with him, just talking through it, and found out some ways that I could kind of some techniques of going off to there was a park in town. I'd go to a park and I would just kind of write in a journal, and there was just some outlets that I found that helped me. But I mean, it was I appreciated Tim getting me connected with that, because that really helped me get through that year too.
Awesome, man. And I was team MVP that year, but to me, you were team MVP. We needed you. You still came and you performed. You couldn't tell that I look back, watch those games sometimes. You try to look and see if you were affected, and you just played the game. And I think there's nothing tougher than that. There's nothing you have to be more mentally tough to do than to get through something like that. So I commend you for that. Like I said, back in those days, I wouldn't know what to say to you about something like that. Like, what do you say? You know what I mean? Like, hey, man, hey, I give you dap 300 times. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So, it was more just, hey, man, just give him space to let him heal. And at the end of the day, that's what we did. And that was a difficult moment, but you came out a lot stronger, from that situation. But, man, we get back to the happier side, man.
Well, first of all,
side. Huh? Go ahead.
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate you saying that. And I did before we left that 98-99 season. I wanted to just show you something real quick. Okay, that is the actual red book of my 98-99 season. Okay, so that had all of our of course you got all of the notes from all the games and everything. But the most important thing in this is in the back. I don't know if you can see this or not. It says AJ versus me Nintendo game battle. That is the actual list on one of our road games. You and I got to going back and forth seeing who could list the most Nintendo games, original NES games. And so on the back, I was writing down the ones that we had listed to see, and whoever couldn't, we went until the other one couldn't list one, and then that was going to be the other one would be the winner. And so I've got Pitfall, Karate Kid, Dig Dug, Joust, Bases Loaded, Duck Hunt. But anyhow, this is vintage AJ Guyton versus Kirk Haston stuff here.
Is that mine? Is me on the left column with the short name?
I think that we were just listing them. We were I was just writing them as they were listed to know that we didn't backtrack. I actually put the alphabet here to help me go through the alphabet and see if I could remember any. So I go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, hoops.
Right.
So you ended up beating me in that battle, but that's vintage 98-99 red book material there.
Hey, man,
among other important things like how to guard Michigan's pick and roll.
The scout, yeah. Hey, we're gonna get to that rare book too, man. I mean, these things roll on because we got so much to cover, man. Kirk Haston, one of the great all-time greats, man. Not only did you go through 2 transfers, you went through a coaching change. What was going through your mind, and did you even think about transferring after Coach Knight got let go in that summer? First, let me rewind that because this is something I do want to ask you. I feel like 99 2000 was one of Coach's greatest coaching jobs. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of talent, but we were one of the best teams in the Big Ten. We competed every game. We go into this, coaches. The thing comes out about Coach right before the Big Ten tournament. So we limping into the Big Ten tournament. You get hurt in the Big Ten tournament, I believe. What happened?
I actually, it was the game before the Big Ten. I had broken my hand. I'd gotten a broken bone in my left hand playing Iowa, I believe, in the last regular season game.
Okay.
And so I had a cast, but I had really struggled. I didn't play very good in the Big Ten tournament.
Right.
And but yeah, I did have a broken bone in my left hand going into the right before the tournament started.
I thought it was a knee issue.
Oh, now you're talking about the that was when we went to Pepperdine.
Yeah.
That we were playing Pepperdine and in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And it was I came down. It was in the first 4 minutes of the game. Lewis on our first offensive possession, Lewis hit me with a pass on the left wing, and I hit a shot that gave him at that point in time the all-time assist leader record at Indiana. And so we all knew he needed one more. And I was like, if he throws it to me, I want to make this shot so I can be the one that got him the record. So I make that shot, go back down, and Pepperdine guy was posting me up and kind of backed into the side of my knee and tore cartilage and had a ligament sprain. And I went down, and that's the first time that I'd ever had an injury like that. I'd never had an injury where like I just couldn't play. Like I couldn't straighten my knee out. I couldn't straighten my leg out. And so I was sent to the locker room immediately. And so that I played 4 minutes in that game against Pepperdine.
I didn't think you played at all because it seemed like I just remember.
I didn't play long.
Yeah, I just remember like we were preparing they had played like a zone press or something. They were long, and I just remember I'm like, we cool because we get the ball in the middle to Kirk. Kirk gonna either hit the jump shot, he's gonna go to the basket, or he's gonna make the pass for a 3. But you wasn't there, and it seemed like it was not on the floor because you weren't there. And I'm like, we gonna get our ass kicked. We don't have enough because we don't have that outlet in the middle. And I was thinking, well, where the hell is Kirk? But I just didn't remember you even starting. And I just remember Larry Richardson being in there, and I'm just like, I love Larry, but I need Kirk out here. Or we in trouble. And of course they upset us and beat us in the first round. Ended my career. But it's such a fog leading up into that because of all that was surrounding the team at that time. And I tell people all the time, I say, you guys get on me. I said, but I lived through 3 transfers and a scandal. It's like in my 4 years, it's like, at that time I'm not thinking, I'm just trying to keep playing and win. But having to overcome all that, man, and then to cap it off with not having you in the tournament where I thought we was going to make a nice run because we had a really good team that year. We were clicking on all cylinders.
It was so frustrating. It was. I remember Coach Knight coming back at halftime when I was in there with the doctors, and he was just like, what? Why can't he get back in the game? Why can't he play? And they were like, he's done, coach. He's going to have to probably have surgery. And I did end up having to have surgery.
Yeah.
But it was like first 2 or 3 minutes of the game that had happened, and then I was done. But the year before was we played. I had the broken hand is when we went to Orlando and we played George Washington and then Ron Artest at St. John's. That was the year before. So, but the knee injury happened that year, and that that was, of course, that was against Van Bredikoff, who had taken the scholarship offer of Vanderbilt. So I was geared up and ready to play against Van Bredikoff. And so it just really was a kick in the teeth.
Absolutely. So what were you going through your mind when Coach Knight got let go? And did you ever think about transferring during that time?
I didn't, because I think for two reasons. Being an upperclassman already and already having a redshirt year on me, I just didn't want to have that another year added on of like waiting to play and the uncertainty. So I loved Bloomington. I loved Indiana. Like I had gotten comfortable there. It was definitely a second home. Felt great. I just loved the people there, and so a lot of the guys were ready to transfer, and it was so strange. We would be getting called out of class. Student athletes, we were getting called out of class to meet with the administration about what we needed to do coaching wise to keep all the team together. Right. And I was like, okay, I've got to miss my class professor because I've got to go but anyhow. Yeah, so we would meet and they would be like, well, what's it going to take to keep everybody intact or everybody here? And it was like these, it was like off the movie Success or the TV show Succession. We're having these high level negotiations and we're like 18, 19 years old, trying to so we finally, everybody calmed down after a few days and we tried to just say, like, listen, if we can keep this nucleus together and we have Davis and Treelor still here and we can keep this unit together, I mean, we can still kind of galvanize this around like this is Coach Knight's group that he put together. I mean, do we want to let this fracture and then we never know? Or it was a little bit more of a, if we can keep this together, we can kind of do it still for Coach Knight. And so we were able to, it was touch and go. I mean, there for a while, I think the linchpin of the whole thing, I spent a lot of time talking with Dane. Yeah. And I don't think I had any impact on his decision making necessarily. Right. Dane's going to do what Dane's going to do, but and he had a good network of family and friends to advise him. But I mean, I really felt like if Dane to stay or if Dane would stay, that everybody else. But if that one person, especially like him, if he left, I thought it's going to be an exodus. Jeffries and everybody would be heading out. But when Dane, the key thing was Dane deciding that he was going to stay. I thought that was the glue that kept everything together that year.
Oh, and then Coach Davis takes over, man. How was Coach Davis different from Coach Knight?
Totally different atmosphere, and I'm not saying in a bad way. I mean, it was. I really enjoyed Coach Davis. I enjoyed playing for him, and thought that it had a much more, looking back and then going on and playing some professional ball. It was a much more of a pro style offense. A lot more set plays, and so, but not as much of the motion. But I like that. I like playing both ways. I don't think that there's one way that's better than the other necessarily, but but it was a little different. We were playing a little bit of zone here and there. But I think that what scared me a little bit with playing for Coach Davis, even though I loved him as a person and just his personality was infectious. Yep. I never was one of his guys.
Right. Yeah.
And there's always a little bit there. I thought of like, he brought in some guys that like it was his recruits and his guys, and so I felt like that I was and maybe I was wrong, but I always felt like I was a little bit on a short leash, and that there was a little bit of there was just there was a couple of red flags along the way that scared me a little bit. Was the first time I missed a game. That year, I missed a game for turf toe. I had turf toe, and they set me out of one of the Hoosier Classic games. Yeah, I think I missed one game, and the next game I came back, I didn't start.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's fine. I'm coming back from an injury. And then the next game I didn't start. And then the next game I didn't start. I was coming in off the bench and I was still, leading scorer, leading rebounder, but I couldn't earn my starting position back.
Right.
And so, and nobody said anything to me. Nobody ever explained it to me. It was gone. I lost, and that's kind of a thing where you don't usually lose a starting job to injury, at least without some sort of explanation. And so I finally, I went to the coaches and I was just like, what do I need to do? And they said, well, as long as we got this winning streak going, we're going to keep it going like this. And I was like, okay, I can go with that. But I was like, I'm coming in and then playing most of the game after and everything. But I was like, I don't know, but you just, some of it's just kind of inexperienced youth and being, frustrated. But I remember there was a couple of things that just kind of stuck in my mind that year is, we played at Ohio State and we were up one with 12 seconds to go, and Ohio State was inbounding the ball. And I jumped out in the passing lane. I probably had 3 steals all year. This was one of them.
Right.
But I jumped out in the passing lane and stole the inbounds pass, that would have been a potential game-winning play for Ohio State. Stole the inbounds pass, went in and laid it in on the other end to put us up 3 with 3 seconds to go.
Mm-hmm.
And after the game, press asked him about it, and he goes, well, he lunges out. He says Haston lunges after stuff all the time in practice. I'm glad he finally got lucky. And I was just like,
right.
I mean, and there was never anything major, but it was just this kind of like along the way. I was just like, I just felt like it was just wasn't a great mesh, and it wasn't anything. He never did anything to me that I could say like, oh, that was it. But it was just a vibe that I just never did feel as comfortable playing for him as I did for Coach Knott.
Right. It looked like it worked out, man, in the end. But playing for Coach Davis, you hit one of the biggest shots in Indiana basketball history against Michigan State, man. So to knock off a team of that caliber, man. Take us back and take us through that play of how that shot came about and what it was bedlam afterward, and you were a big man on campus again. Take us back to that.
Well, I give Coach Davis a lot of credit for allowing me to start shooting threes. Like he really did let me branch out, and I never shot any threes in high school or anything. And he just he cut me loose, and I give him a ton of credit for that. And he gave me a lot of confidence with that. And so, we actually, Kyle Hornsby, we designed the play for Kyle Hornsby coming off, some staggered screens coming up to the top of the key. And I was kind of the backup. I was the plan B. If Hornsby wasn't, open at the top to take it, I was supposed to flare out for a little kickback. And so that's how it went. Now, what was supposed to happen was Randolph was supposed to hopefully chase after Hornsby. And so that would get him. He didn't go because, like I said earlier, he's a smart defender. And so when I caught it, I got it back, Randolph's just right in front of me.
Right.
And luckily, Zach's an incredible player. But luckily, if there was maybe one player in the Big Ten I could jump 1 inch higher than, it was Zach. Exactly. He wasn't just he didn't have just incredible hops, had everything else though. So I was able to take one little escape dribble and get the shot off over him, and fortunately it went in. And I tell people I've taken 2 game-winning shots in my entire basketball career. One, we were down 1 my junior year in high school in the state championship game, and I missed it. And the second one was against Michigan State. So all time I'm 1 for 2. But
1 for 2.
Luckily, Coverdale, I got on the bottom of that dog pile, and luckily Coverdale came in and pulled me out because it was getting dark and pretty heavy at the bottom of that. But Coverdale just started throwing people off like King Kong Bundy in a Royal Rumble. But it was that was a pretty special day.
Awesome, man. And you hit the big shot, man, and they rushed the floor, man. And I'm sure there's no feeling like that. To make a game-winning shot in Assembly Hall.
You know that feeling at Michigan State, though, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. I know that feeling at Temple. Temple.
Yeah.
Home against Temple. So that place exploded.
You hit a big one at Michigan State too, didn't you? I think we ended up going into overtime, and we made.
Morris Peterson hit a big one to send it into overtime, but we had I think I had a 6-point lead with about a minute 10 left. We missed the front end at run of a 1-and-1. And I know I had a great game. I know against at home, I hit one to tie it. And then I shot the air ball for the Lynn Washington to lay it up. And then the one against Temple and Penn State, at Penn State. So, but yeah, it was, I mean, it's nothing like hitting a game winner in Assembly Hall. That place explodes. And it's like you can't hear anything.
That was one of the things that blew my mind as my first year there. Of course, I was just watching games on the bench. I could not believe how loud. I've told people that you could be at half. Somebody could be shooting free throws, and you could be at the 3-point line, and you're trying to scream at them like the next play or the defensive assignment. You could scream, and they would not hear you. They would not know anybody was near them. I mean, it's unbelievable how loud that place was.
Unbelievable. You gotta learn sign language real quick, man. Last but not least, certainly not least, I want to dive into this classic right here that you penned, man. Days of Night. You talked about how this idea came about, but your mother was the one who initially told you to make sure that you kept all those notes and that you kept a journal of your experience in Indiana. And that's some forethought for you, because I don't know where my red book is. I couldn't tell you what happened to it. And now once I saw you pen that book, I'm like, where's my red book? Why I throw that thing away? Because you have, and you still have that red book. That's what you just showed me right there. Yeah. And it is the reason you was able to pen it. So those who don't have that, go out there and make sure you get this. I had to start rereading it because I read it at Northwestern in the middle of a season, and you're just not focused in the middle of the season. So preparing for this discussion, I started reading again. I'm like, and the memories start flooding back. And I'm like, man, I got time to focus and really read it. What was the thought process of that went into creating this book for the Hoosier faithful?
Well, I was just going through the attic, and I came across, the red books that I stored away. And
how many did you have?
I had 3 of them. I'm missing one. Yeah. I don't know what happened to it. I had 3 of the red books, and then I had this journal that mainly is from my freshman and sophomore years. My mom had given me this journal and just said, hey, you're going to want to remember some of these stories, type things, and so just, when and so I would write down people that we met. Like I started keeping a list of people that would come by and visit, Manning and Archie would come by, and I'd write something about, just so I could remember it. And so I had a bunch of stories. What I started to do in the red book, though, because Coach Knott every now and then would check out your red book. He would kind of like thumb through it, and he would say crazy stuff sometimes, some funny stuff. and I didn't want to write, I would want to remember it. And so I would, but I didn't want to write in there and be like, Coach Knott just called Bobby Crimmins. I didn't want to write that down because he was like, why is Kirk writing this stuff down? Mm-hmm. So I would have to like in the margins, I would almost like write in code. Like I would be like, RMK, B, and I would, so I could go back and kind of decipher it later just so I could remember that story, because I don't have the greatest memory in the world. Right. But I just tried to write down a bunch of stories like that. And once I came across it, I guess, the way I kind of the overarching had going into it was plenty of negative stuff out there on Coach Knott.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, any ESPN documentary, whatever, it's just there's plenty. If they're going to talk about Coach Knott, the first thing they're going to do is show 2 or 3 terrible things. I said that stuff's been covered. I said, going back to the scales thing that we were talking about earlier, I was like, I think that a lot of Hoosier basketball fans might like to at least see some of the other side, some of the comedy, some of the funny lines, some of the stories that maybe would balance out, because if nothing else is out there, everybody's going to be like, well, why did anybody ever want to play for this person? It makes us look like we're crazy.
Like we're crazy. I've not seen
that way if everybody just knows the 10% of the bad Coach Knott stories that are out there and not see the other big percentage of other stuff that was going on that we saw and experienced. So that just trying to balance out the scales a little bit and selfishly, you just, for my family and my kids and stuff one day, I mean, I'm not going to be able to remember all this or get it all in video to them. So like, hopefully they'll be able to know what it was, the experience was like one day when they're older.
Right, man. So what was that conversation like? Because, stuff like this with Coach Knight can go either way. So I know you probably approached him and said, "Hey, Coach, I'm writing a book on you, man." Was it complete? Man. Was it complete before you asked him, or did you ask him before you wrote it? And what was his response?
I start sweating you just talking about this whole process.
That's a tough. You don't understand. That's a tough conversation, man. When a documentary or a book or that's like
landmine. Landmine. I mean, you're looking. So I actually didn't even tell my wife that I was working on this book for about a year. I would write after she'd go to bed. I'd write at night, or I'd go to the basement and I'd work on it. And I got about 8 chapters done, and I'd sent it to a couple of people, and I'd gotten some, I'd gotten to the point where it looked like somebody was going to be interested in getting it or publishing it. Yep. And then I told my wife that I was even working on it, because there's nothing more annoying than that person that says, "Hey, I'm working on a book," anyhow. So I wanted to say I've got a book ready to go. So once I got I knew that I could be doing all of this and it just not matter, because Coach Knott torpedoed it. So I printed off a copy at one of these Kinkos. I printed off a big old thick copy. It was about like this, one, and mailed it. I told Miss Karen, Coach Knott's wife, about it, and I said, "Listen, I'm going to send you this. Read over it. Know what you think before I go forward with it. I just want to make sure that y'all are comfortable with it." And so and she got back to me, and they didn't have any problem with it, and she said, "Now there's nothing that's going to come out of this that's going to hurt him." Right. That's what she said to me, because she's like, he's been through a lot, and I didn't really know it at the time. I'd heard things about his health a little bit, but I think that she was kind of alluding to like, he's got a lot going on right now. And so I was like, I told her, I said, "This is not a blind side. I mean, there's nothing that, I'm putting in there later that you're not going to see." I said, "Now, there's some things in there that, they're kind of, Coach Knott being Coach Knott with some of his language." She said, she's like, "You can't tell a story without, you can't tell a story about Coach without, some of the language in it." And I was like, well, and so, but I told her what made her feel better about it is I said, "Listen, my publisher wants to add the line to Days of Night. It was their idea to say how the general changed my life." Right. And I said, they read it. This is what they, so once she knew that was going to be the title, she felt comfortable about it too. But it was a nerve-wracking conversation to see how it was going to go. And then Coach Knight gave me a blurb, which I think they said the publisher at the time said that they've never had a blurb on the front of the book that it's about that has to do with the subject. It's usually you don't have. They said, but in this situation, it seemed to fit, and so he was nice enough to give a blurb for it. So it wouldn't have gone anywhere if he didn't want it to. But they were okay with it.
How was the book accepted by fans? How has it done?
It's done pretty good. I mean, it's been pretty consistent. I mean, it's not gonna be, Oprah's not gonna be recommending it or talking about it anytime soon to anybody. I mean, it's not, but I'm not going to buy a car off of the royalties or anything, but it's been fun. I think that, when they released the audio book, and I told them, I know I sound country, I know, but like, hearing some of the names and how people are, that they talk about some of the having somebody else read your book. It's kind of weird. I was like, let me just do I don't mind. I'll read it. And they didn't want me to do it. But anyhow, it's had a nice little run. I mean, it's every now and then it would get up there on the Amazon, sports basketball biographies. If you get it really refined down, it can go up the list a little bit. And it would creep up and be a decent number for a little bit, but it's been fun.
That's good, man. And it's an easy read. That's what I liked about it. It's very easy to read. It's
because it's short. It's so short because I that's all I maxed out my writing in that one book. So that's all I could do.
Once again, everybody go out there. And I'm gonna start posting some of these quotes on my social medias because I didn't realize there was so many great ones in there, man. Kirk Haston is one of my all-time favorite players. That's a quote from Coach Knight. And I can understand why, because I was there watching the development and watching him turn you into an all-star. So last thing I want to touch on, man, is what you think, what was your thoughts when Coach Knight did decide to return to Bloomington? You were there, I was there. We took some selfies, we coined some terms, man, and we had a great time. Coach Knight came through. What did you think about the magic of that night?
I really thought it was a really cathartic, kind of healing closure moment for a lot of people associated with the Hoosier family, whether you're a manager, a doctor, trainers, players, fans. It was just something that I didn't think that we would see, and just to see what it obviously ended up. Coach Knight never would be too emotional about anything. You very rare. I remember when he got fired, I went out to his house. And they were packing up their house, and I knew they were getting ready to leave. And I went out to visit with them, and I gave him a hug on the front porch, and it was the most awkward hug you've ever had in your life. It was. If you go out, if you want to get a feel for the awkwardness of it, go out to your front yard, and just hug the tree in your front yard. And it was kind of like, because he's a big guy. And so he never was much on that. So to see how emotional he was, and you could see how obvious how it touched him. That's why there was a lot of grown men crying in Assembly Hall and at home probably too. But it was just special to and there's been jealous of like the North Carolina basketball family and some of these basketball families that are just like that has like this if there's any kind of connection to Dean Smith, like and it may not actually be like this, but it feels like somebody that graduated from North Carolina yesterday could somehow call Michael Jordan and he'd pick up the phone just because they were on the same team. It's probably not like that, but that's what the perception is. And I've always felt like there's been a little bit of a fracture and a disconnect, and there's been plenty of people out there doing their best to keep fracturing stuff just for clickbait and ratings. But I just think that in the grand scheme of things, Coach Knight brought together a lot of players that a lot of times overachieved and graduated and won basketball games. Clean program, and there's a lot of things that you can say that are negative, but when you just look at the totality of that, it means a lot to kind of have him come back and experience the love that a lot of us had for him for those reasons.
Absolutely, man. We had a heck of an experience, man. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I'd do it all over again. It was an experience that was very unique because, I remember I was in Italy walking down the street playing in Italy. I played in Bologna. I saw you played in Capo Orlando too. We ain't gonna get into that, but I played in Bologna for a few years. And there's a guy just walked out the store. He's like, AJ Guyton. I'm like, I'm in Bologna, Italy. Playing for Bobby Knight. Like, and you know that how? Like, and then just how special playing for IU is. So, we would all do it all over again. And but the point of this podcast is actually to bring all that full circle, man. And the end of this podcast, what we like to do is have an all IU reunion. You know what I mean? A real one where everybody's there. It's not Crean's players, it's not Knight's players, it's not Coach David's players or Sampson players. It's IU basketball. And we have a very unique story to tell, man. And I'm sure that would be an amazing experience if we were ever able to do that. I'll put the pressure on Isaiah, who I had on the show. I'll put the pressure on Quinn to do it, and any other OGs, I'll call them, that come on the show. I'm putting the pressure on them to make that happen.
Those two guys have handled pressure pretty well in their careers.
Absolutely.
I think they can handle this pass and do the right thing on that, hopefully. But I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing with this. I mean, stuff like this connective tissue that you create, bringing people in and talking things. It ends up networking and just connecting more and more people to it, and hopefully it continues to snowball. But I appreciate you doing it as well. I mean that's I think this is a great thing that you've got going on here, and I wanted to show you something real quick.
Okay.
That I was. Everybody's going through some quarantine cleaning in the last few months, so I came across. I don't know how I ended up with these, but I'll be glad to send these out if anybody will message me where they need to go. So I got from somehow from the locker room. So I got that one. I've got that one.
Classic.
I got a vintage Washington, and somehow I ended up with a vintage Guyton.
Wow.
So you let me know.
Classic.
You send me your address. I'll make sure that you get your original nameplate sent to you. I have no idea how I got this, but I'm glad I found it.
You just took a bag and just started just throwing, and it was a smart move. Like it wasn't.
Hey, that stuff would be gone. That stuff would be gone.
You know what probably happened is the coaching change. Like they started moving that stuff out, didn't they? Like changed the locker room a little bit. So I probably did the same thing. I'd have collected all that, kept it for the fellas. I'm gonna tell Luke you got his, and Lynn you got his. We need those things. That's all we got left. A jersey,
hit me up.
Flag, a picture, books. That's all we got left, man. I'm gonna get that out you. Hey, to finalize, man, recap your Indiana career for us. Tell us what type of player you hope that the Hoosier faithful saw that came in and the one who left. And kind of break it down to them what you hope they saw in you as a player.
Somebody that had a good work ethic and somebody that was a good teammate. And just I hope they saw somebody that they felt like was at home in Assembly Hall, was at home in Bloomington. I mean, it just I think especially in this era of one and done, I don't think that a lot of guys have that. You get that feel and that connection, and like there, like you can speak to this more than anybody. Is like when you're there for 4 years, I mean, you just like you get used when somebody asks you what your home number is, you think of your number there, in Bloomington, and so I think that comes through on the court with some guys. You can just feel that, and I just love the community, love the people there, and I hope that showed up on the court.
So Kirk, man, you get drafted into the NBA draft. You're a first round pick, 16th pick of the Charlotte Hornets, I believe, man, and you had a great career. If you ever touched the NBA floor, man, you've had a great.
I had a great college career.
I'm trying to sweeten it up here, man, because we were all stars, man, in our NBA careers.
My kids and the players I used to coach, their favorite draft fact that they love to make fun of me about, and I can't knock them, was that I was drafted before NBA Finals MVP.
Who?
Tony Parker.
Really?
Yeah.
They picked you. I was kidding.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
That's a heck of an experience, man. What's one of your favorite memories from playing in the NBA? Your favorite games or favorite approaches with a certain player? Take us back.
My far one of my favorites is we were playing. Jordan was in his last year. He was with the Wizards, and we were in Washington, and Jordan and I've still got this. I've got the original stat sheet in the house. I'll have to find it somewhere, but I saved it. But Jordan and I combined for 53 points in a game, and Jordan had 51 of them. But I was I was 1 of 1 from the field on my hook shot. I mean, I was 100%. I mean, he missed like 12 shots. Who can't score 51 points at 38 years of age, missing 12 or 13 shots? But the Paul Harvey rest of the story is this. So after the game, Stacey Augmon was a teammate, and so we're ready. I'm ready. I get dressed, showered, and I'm heading to the bus. And I'm getting ready to leave, and Augmon is still getting dressed, and the ball boy for the Wizards comes in, and Jordan, since it was his last year, when he would play somebody that he respected, like Stacey Augmon, he would send over the game shoes that he wore in the game signed to that player that he was. Now you know that you're the GOAT when you can just be like you give somebody 51. You beat them, and you know they're going to be happy to get your used shoes. You know you're in a high level. So anyhow, so they come over and they hand Stacey Augmon brand new, bright white, blue Jordans that he wore one time. He'd only wear a pair of shoes one time each game, and giant Michael Jordan autograph on each side of the shoe. And so I'm getting ready to walk to the. The bus, and Augman's like, he's like, he called me Rabbit. Story for another day, but that was like it was my nickname from like the 8 Mile movie. Whatever. So he goes Rabbit, and I was like, yeah. He goes, can you carry these to the bus for me? And I was like, yeah. And so I'm walking through there, with these Jordan, just like museum quality piece, thinking like, man, what would these go for on eBay?
Right, exactly.
But like, and I was just like, there was a lot of moments like that, and you probably had some of these too, where it was just kind of like you're kind of like Forrest Gump in your own life. You're like, how in the world am I here doing this right now? So that was all the time. Was a fun. That was the happiest I've ever been to score just 2 points in a game in my entire NBA career. That was it.
I think we're doing this on the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's death. You got any Kobe Bryant stories that you remember?
Kobe hit his. If you'll go back and look at some of his clips, I think it was his first game-winning shot, like buzzer beater shot, was in Charlotte, and it was against us. And my claim to fame on this whole moment was on the shot when it goes in. I'm on the bench, of course, and I think I'm standing with a towel around my neck, and when he hits it, I just go.
Right, you just drop your head.
So I'm immortalized forever in that Kobe Bryant moment. But no, I was always, it was always kind of on the outskirts of greatness when I was around, but I was close enough to be able to get some firsthand viewing points of some great moments, even though I wasn't directly a part of a lot of them.
Yeah, definitely, man. That was a heck of a story, man. Two legends. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. But you were one of if there was a Mount Rushmore to some of those genuine fun people, you would be on that Mount Rushmore for sure. And I appreciated you showing up to my Hall of Fame induction. I didn't expect you to be there. You came there, supported, appreciated that, man. That was a big time move. Did you get inducted?
No. But listen,
on this podcast, it's time. I don't know what y'all waiting on. He announced his retirement 15 years ago. It's time.
At this Mount Rushmore exhibit that we were talking about a while ago with the 4, I am glad to be in the parking lot parking cars as long as I'm somewhere on the vicinity of the national park of Hoosier Nation. So I'm like, I'll point you like, hey, listen, that's where all the trophies are, where all the monuments are. As long as I'm on the property, I'm happy. Don't worry about it.
I'm happy. That's what I tell them. As long as I'm part of it, I'm cool. You can say whatever you want to say. I had a fabulous time, man. Do it all over again. I'll do it better the second time too. So, man,
definitely. By the way, I've been watching some of her highlights.
Mhm.
By the way, we need to get her to Vanderbilt. You may have to cut this. This may. I have no ties to Vanderbilt. It's not illegal, but like
Right.
I'd like to. I can make it to games if she's at Tennessee now. I mean,
Right.
but that's huge. That is
Yes, it
huge.
is.
Is it Aaliyah? Is that
Aaliyah
right?
Guyton, yep. He's speaking about my daughter. She got her first college offer. She actually got a letter from Indiana a couple of days
Really?
later. Yeah, she got her first letter. She's excited about that. She's only a freshman, man. She hadn't even touched the floor yet, but she has got
2024.
2024, man. So
she has such a smooth hesitation crossover. It looks very familiar. Looks very familiar.
I had to sprinkle a little bit in there. I didn't,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But thank you for that, man. Vanderbilt's a heck of a school, man. It's a Jesuit school, and it's definitely, I hope they're still around in 3-4 years when it's time. So, and we know Nashville. Our family's from Dyersburg, Tennessee. So
I don't think that's
that's where our whole family originated from, Dyersburg, Tennessee. So we're actually in Tennessee and Halls a lot, throughout our lives. So we have Tennessee roots is what I'm getting at, and definitely gonna introduce her to those. But we'll be seeing what happens with her, man. But
I wish her the best of luck, man. That's exciting.
Appreciate it. It's exciting, man. It's the same to you and your family. We didn't get a chance to talk about our fantastic NBA careers that we had. We didn't get a chance to cover, a couple different things, but I'm sure we'll see each other down the road again. But because it's just too much. I remember my producer, I know he's trying to, you keep these to 45. I'm like, we can't keep these to 45 minutes, man. It's a lot going on, man, that we got to talk about. But we'll definitely keep in touch, man, and I hope everything's going well. We didn't even get to touch on the political aspect and what you were trying to accomplish. So, we made this strictly Indiana, and I think that's what the people want to hear. But we'll get to the other stuff the next time, man. So once again, everybody, give it up for my guest, Kirk Haston, one of my favorite players, all-time favorite players. Go get this book. I don't care that it was printed 6 years ago. I want you to go get it. It's still relevant. A lot of quotables in it, man, and you'll be seeing it on my Twitter and on my Facebook page as we go forward, because I didn't even remember he had so many Coach Knight quotes and moments in there, and this is just a special thing. So thanks, Kirk, man. Appreciate you taking the time, brother, and we will stay in touch, man. You have a good one.
Thanks, AJ. Good to visit with you, man.